Good evening, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business, if you could stand if you're able, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Next item on the agenda is recognition for the Cape Cod Five.
I would like to call Principal Heidi Latender to the table to talk to us about the Cape Cod 5 educational mini grants and the recipients of those grants. So welcome, Mrs. Latender. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Superintendent Lyons. Thank you for having me, school committee. Good evening, everyone. So Cape Cod 5 Bank in Hyannis has been providing mini grants to fund educational projects to public school teachers since 2000. These grants are in amounts up to $500. And I'm proud to share with you that the Nichols Middle School was awarded 2 of these $500 grants. When Mrs. Lyons shared the grant opportunity with us, I shared it with our staff, and I knew a couple teachers who had some ideas. And Mrs. Frank Core, our art teacher, was one of them, and she had proposed to me that she would like to get student artwork more on display out in the community. And she was also looking at getting the artwork displayed on our driveway. So if you ever go up our half-mile driveway, we have all the light posts, and we would love to hang student artwork on the light posts, like banners. And we're looking at displaying some of the, it would obviously be student artwork, and have the students come up with the Tiger Strong logo, come up with the icons for the 3 words that we are now implementing at our school under the PBIS initiative, which is empowerment, growth, and success, which is going to be tied to each grade level. So we're looking to build that school community and have our student artwork on display. So the student artwork being transformed into banners comes at a cost. And so they did award Mrs. Frank Core $500 towards this project.
Cool.
And then we also have another $500 grant, which was put together by Josh Dyer, our special ed coordinator, along with Hannah Swale. She's one of our special education teachers in a substantially sub-separate classroom. And they're looking to put together the Tiger Tea and Coffee Cart. And then this cart is an initiative to allow some of our middle school students to practice their life skills that will serve them as they mature during their time at NMS. And some of these skills involve money management, social skills, hygiene, staff and peer interactions, and responsibility. As students practice and develop these skills, they will better be prepared for the time at Middleborough High School when they are able to work in the Cranberry Cafe. So if that is what they choose, as well as being prepared for their own lives outside of school. So the grant of $500 will go towards the adaptive utensils, coffee makers, and supplies required to allow our students to practice these skills necessary to have a successful program. And it is the hope to begin the early stages of this in the spring and then have a larger rollout at Nichols Middle School with the staff with these students in the fall of 2023. So we're very excited to be awarded these 2 grants, and thank you so much for allowing me to share this news with you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, first of all, awesome, thank you. Congratulations to both who put that work in. But moving forward, how do you anticipate, perhaps continuing to fund a cart of that sort?
That is a great question. So that's something we might have to consider and maybe look at the CPAC organization and see if they were willing to help fund it, or if we can do some mini fundraisers. We actually had Mr. Rose, who did financial literacy with our students, with our AIM sub-separate students, have them make fidget spinners. That was earlier in the year. And they sold them in the cafeteria, and we gave those donations towards CPAC. So maybe that's something we could, use those funds towards for the cart for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Or it might be something we need to budget for,
Right.
but it's a great opportunity for our students to learn those skills.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Mrs. Latender, this is not the first time Cape Cod 5 has given us awards of this nature, correct?
I don't recall at
I
my
think we've had
building, but
one
maybe in
before.
the other buildings.
I'm not sure. I think we've had one before.
Yep, and I believe the high school is also the recipient of some of these mini grants. I believe Principal Brannigan was talking about that at last meeting.
Good, thank you.
Awesome,
Thank you, Heidi.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
With that, next item on our agenda is public comment. Does anyone wish to speak on anything not on tonight's agenda? Go right up to the mic.
Can I adjust?
Yeah, please adjourn.
Okay, please bear with me, as I am not a public speaker. I'm Nicole Finch. I would like to say thank you for allowing me this time to speak on a personal matter. In a time where I have so much to say, it seems beyond difficult to find the correct words to say. January 5th, my son was physically assaulted by a cafeteria monitor. I will not go into depths on this situation, as it is an ongoing criminal investigation. I stand here today to speak on behalf of all the children and the parents of the community with children in our public school system. My child has attended Middleborough Public Schools for 5 years, and it wasn't until that day I have lost faith in our school system. At which point, in anyone's demeanor, is it okay to physically reprimand or put their hands on anyone, never mind a child? Children are very vulnerable beings with a sense of innocence that hopefully carries them into adulthood. To me, my child was stripped of that, stripped of the comfort and safety of a school setting, betrayed by the hands of someone he found with a friend within. So I present to you today, just a month shy of my son's incident, and 2 days after yet another incident involving a child and staff member. No child should ever have to tiptoe around the triggers of an adult. No adult should ever feel compelled to react in any other way than a rational manner. And both times, these children were failed. The children who witnessed this were also failed. The parents who send their children to school daily were failed. So I stand here to ask you, when was the last time a behavioral management training was held? What are your further steps as a district to ensure this reoccurrence of isolated incidents no longer continue to take place? What plan is in place for children to feel safe coming to or returning from school after something like this happens? What further trainings are you implementing to avoid such a scenario instead of inclusivity, diversity, and equality? What Karma Choice classes are you going to force upon teachers and staff the way it was forced upon our children? What are your hiring procedures and protocols? And how are you going to weed out the people who are capable of mistreating others like this? And last but not least, what counseling and/or therapy services are being accessible for children who have experienced or witnessed this?
So I just want to address a couple things with you. One is this: the incident that occurred happened after we published the agenda.
Yes.
So in public comment, I can't address what happens in public comment, but I can promise you it'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And it's just the way it fell during the week. I know the superintendent and the administration sent out notice to parents, and that will be a conversation for our next meeting.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
When the last incident was occurred, whatever, why was it only sent to fourth grade parents and not every parent in the district?
Well, this is
Sure.
public comment.
Yeah, I know, but maybe that one particular, why the fourth grade parents as opposed to everybody else.
Well, so I did email you and invited a conversation with you at any point yesterday, so I would like to renew that request, that after you emailed me and I responded and I thought we should speak, I still think that. In terms of this particular incident recently, from 2 days ago, which is in stark contrast and very different to the previous incident that you described, you know, we did make the decision to communicate only with fourth grade parents. This was a different incident that did occur at fourth grade lunch. It did not involve the police. It did not involve outside authorities. And so it was treated differently in terms of communication, as well as our response. So that was the thinking behind why only communicating with the fourth grade parent community. We feel this is a very different event. And I would welcome that conversation with you specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else under public comment? Seeing no one, I will move on. Anyone from the school committee members?
I'm good.
Seeing none, I know Nate is at student council tonight, and so we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Young. I'm going to start with the high school program of studies and call Mr. Brannigan up to the table to talk about what's in store for next school year at the high school.
everyone. Good evening. And this is one of my really favorite things to do as principal, to come here before you to share with you the work of the faculty as we prepare for a new school year, and with the hope that you will approve our program of studies formally so that we can get going on getting our students scheduled for next year. So I have just really a really modest overview of really just the changes, as always, for our community. That the program of studies presentation is just really looking at just the new things and potentially things that we're taking out of the program of studies as well. So just as always, just a thank you to all the department leaders, Mr. Siciliano for his work in helping us evolve a book that was about 200 pages long into really something that is much more accessible for our community. To Mrs. Laura Luco, who's in charge of our master schedule, Dr. Markelitis and the curriculum team, and of course the counseling department, MHS school counseling department, as they are the gatekeepers for our students in their courses. As always, it's important to note that our school improvement, our program of studies is connected to the district mission and also our core values, beliefs, and learning expectations that is really woven through the document as well. The question that we really started to raise with our teachers as we began this process back in September is really, how does our academic program complement and enhance the student experience within the new high school? Now that we're in the building and we have gotten kind of ourselves settled, it's really an opportunity to make sure the fact that we're maximizing the opportunities that this building provides in terms of our programming across the curriculum areas as well. As always, we're looking at culture of achievement and innovation, culture of excellence, and cultural well-being, which are the pillars of the district accommodation plan as well. And then you just see the school-wide learning expectations that we weave through all of the work we do in the classrooms. And it's just important to have this because this is an essential element of the courses as well. Community service to begin, the fact that we will continue with the class of 2027 with the minimum collection of 24 hours of validated service during their 4 years at the high school. So all of our grades are required to do that service work. And Mrs. McGurk, who is in charge of all of our service learning opportunities, does a really fabulous job of giving the opportunities to our students. But that will continue with the class of 27. Looking at really criteria for graduation at each grade level, we're maintaining the 136 credits to graduate. And then, of course, looking at the college entrance expectations, we're continuing with the 4-year requirement. Now, I give a caveat to that because the graduation requirement for mathematics is 3 years. But for any senior or any student who is considering on any level going to a 4-year school, that they have to have 4 years of math on their transcript, which is why that we always put it out there for our students to consider that 4-year track. And MCAS expectations, that now that we are on the other side of the pandemic, that the expectations for MCAS are back in full form for all of our students that have to meet the proficiency standards in biology and mathematics and in English as well. So we just want to make sure that that is there. As you know, over the last couple of years, there had been some modifications of that based upon the situation with COVID. The new high school. Really, this document that I'm going to share with you, or the highlights, is really reflective of the wonderful learning opportunities that are provided here in this new building. Starting in September, the entire faculty began the process of doing a deep dive into their program of studies, looking at the things that they need to change, looking at new courses that have really served us well but need to be shelved, and then also really looking at how we're maximizing this new school. And I think we're pretty excited to share with you what we're doing. Just one last piece about the document. The new program of studies is really continuing with what we did last year, which was our launch of really making it much more technologically based. It allows families to go into really a spreadsheet, really, to be able to see every course or every content area in a tab. So you can have it there without having to thumb through pages. And it also allows for you to be able to, it's ADA compliant, which is inaccessible for all, which was an important element for us as well. So that means that the new documents can be easily translated for families that need to do that. So with that being said, let me share with you some of the changes. In the updating in English language arts, that for grade 12, we're going to go to an English 4 model. Because of really a lot of the work that's revolving around choice in literature, the fact that we're moving to more of the English 4 model, and you're going to note in just a moment in the new slides that we had really created about, I'm going to go back maybe 8 or 9 years ago, in really creating an English program that had more topical senior English rather than just simple English 4. But what is different is that this English 4 is going to allow students to have the choice, because before that, in English 4, everyone had to do the same thing, which was really not really the spirit of what we wanted to do. So for our rising seniors, they will choose either English 4 College Prep or English 4 Honors. And the courses that will be kind of removed for the year, you're going to notice the asterisks, and I'll explain that in a minute. But you'll notice that the grade 12 English courses, these are the courses that we had created, along with many others, in terms of real topical English courses in grade 12. What we found was that the ones you see here in your slide were the ones that were the most popular. And so really look dystopian literature, literature and film, psychology and literature, and sports and literature, those particular courses are going to be the ones removed, and that English 4 will be replaced. So will still be the 4-year requirement. The Reader's Journey, which is a new elective, the department felt it was probably best to move on from that. What they hoped it would be wasn't. And then, of course, you see the ones that are asterisked. We decided that in some of these content areas, you're going to notice that we're going to kind of take a year off and then bring it back again. And what we found is in some courses that we had exhausted the course, meaning the fact that so many of our students, minus the incoming 9th grade, have taken the course that it was no longer really a viable option, and what could we do to do something a little bit different. And so you notice the gender studies, Gothic literature, civil disobedience, and then AP seminar and AP research are going to come off for this upcoming school year and then potentially come back on in the 2024-25 year. The AP seminar and research, that we need to go back and get a new person trained, which is why the fact we're not in a place to run those courses in the upcoming year for that. In mathematics, I'm really excited because finally, we have a financial literacy program that we're going to be implementing into grade 12. As you know, for all of our families and for school committee, that in grade 12, that our students who go into a 12th grade math, it may be an AP course for some, but for many, it's statistics. And that has served us for some time. But we also know the fact that we have a responsibility to be able to engage our seniors in a very different concept of mathematics. And that's why the launch of the financial literacy program will allow for seniors to use that as a 12th grade math as an option other than statistics. Mm-hmm. It will be something that will be open to all seniors. So it's really, I'm pretty excited by that. You're also going to see this is really that reflective practice of really what are our students asking for. And you're going to see these new electives. They are the numbers game and the stock market to really help kids be able to do real world kind of learning in regards of really applying mathematics. So these 2 new electives are pretty exciting for our students. And then you're going to notice that there is a new advanced placement class that we're hoping to do, which is pre-calculus. There has been a lot of work done over the last many months of really looking at this new opportunity for our students in advanced placement. And it's really moving kids into that AP course for pre-calculus because it is a stepping stone into the calculus programs later. And you'll notice the fact that with that being said, the courses that would be coming out is our quantitative reasoning class. No one ever has signed up for that, so it's time to move on from that. You'll see these 2 electives that are asterisked because we're going to really embed those new electives that I just shared and that remove history of mathematics and the SAT review class. And I want to state for the SAT review that we found that many students weren't taking that particular course, and the fact that we do offer and we have partners that offer SAT review that we market to students as well. And also keep in mind that so many of our universities now have become SAT optional. So it became something where let's step aside to it, let's do something different, and we can always bring it back as well. You'll notice the elimination of Calculus Calculus BC, the half-year experience. That has to come out because next year the course will be a full year. So we needed to eliminate that half-semester course because of the way our current schedule runs. You'll also notice the elimination of pre-calculus honors. It will be replaced with the pre-calculus AP. When you look at actually the standards in the College Board the pre-calculus class, it is nearly identical to really what these students are doing in honors. So it really allowed for us to say, you know what, to kind of have these 2 programs running at the same time, really doing the same thing, it really allows our students to be able to have the same content and the same curriculum, but allows them to be able to navigate the pre-calculus experience a little bit differently. So we're pretty excited by this opportunity. History and social sciences, they're beginning a huge curriculum review next year. So as at this time, there are no changes in their courses and in their content area at this time. Science and engineering, what I'm really excited by is that we're finally making our way into creating a formal robotics program in a course. It has always been something that has been embedded in our Project Lead the Way program, and we really felt it was time, especially with this facility, to really begin to take our students into this range of really offering a robotics program. You'll also notice in AP Computer Science A, because of the Project Lead the Way program, that we have so many students in computer science that really are ready for the next level of AP, that Computer Science A will be run next year. We did a couple of test runs this year with some students, and we were really quite pleased with really the outcome of that, or what we hope to be the outcome as they complete the year. So now it will be a formal add. And then ultimately, the removing of the courses. The tech systems program is leaving because we're replacing it with robotics. It's a much more modern, current, relevant experience, which is why that robotics program will replace it. Topics in marine biology is going to be taking a shelf for a period of time. And you're going to notice the fact that the computer program in Design Essentials, which historically has been a 9th grade requirement, so all of our 9th graders had to take this class in 9th grade. We're no longer doing that. Because of the changes that we're making in computer science, especially because of this facility, that we have students coming into our building at all different levels of their computer science skills. And so it still will be something students can take, and it will be offered, and we'll market that, but it's not going to be a mandatory class that all 9th graders take, because we found that we have students coming in that are far beyond that course. So instead of having everyone take it, they'll have a little bit more autonomy of choosing a technology course. It's still a graduation requirement, the technology credits, but it's going to give them a lot more flexibility. You'll also notice the Project Lead the Way. We're still running it next year. We really are so proud of this program. The biomedical science, as you notice the 4 courses that are there, each one is in a grade. The engineering program, that this time we're kind of allowing entry points to be different, and especially even in biomedical science, the fact that we're kind of modifying that if you don't start in 9th grade, you're not eligible to take it, and we're really not liking how that looks. So now we're allowing students as a 10th grader to say, you know, I really, really wanted to do this and I couldn't do it, and now here's my opportunity to do it. So we're pretty excited by that. And we're hoping that we'll be able to get some interest in aerospace engineering, because it seems like there is some interest around the building. And then you'll also see the computer science piece as well, which is really just the 3 main courses, but then ultimately the adding of that next level for the grades 12 student of that AP Computer Science A. World languages, we're removing just 1 course, our conversational Spanish course. It has just not been a really well-run course in terms of enrollment. And then really new courses that our French 3 and 4 program, as well as Russian 3 and 4, has never been run at the college preparatory program, but we decided to make it a little bit more equitable for all students to gain that entry point, especially after year 2, that now we'll be offering both of those courses at the college prep and honors level. Honors will remain, but we'll be offering both of those languages now at CP. And then the new elective they're running, which I think will be really quite exciting, is European culture through film, art, and music. So it'll be open to students starting in the fall. In visual arts, we have 2 new courses that are coming in. Start Drawing, which I think is going to be a really exciting course for the students. And then, of course, our advanced clay. Our clay program has been very, very popular, and there has been an ask from students to say, can we do a little bit more? Is there another layer that we could be doing? And so we finally have the tenants in place to be able to offer that course next year. Removed course, this is a prime example of a course that has been exhausted, which is that creating, responding to art. It is a course that nearly probably almost every student during the COVID years took, and we just realized it's time to move on from that course. And the creating 2D to 3D, that we're absorbing a lot of those skills within the other art courses, and it was a course that wasn't really running. In theater, with our new theater teacher, Mr. Mosier, that there's some new courses that are coming in. Our play production class will come back, and with Mr. Mosier's background in technical theater, it will really allow this facility, especially this auditorium, to really take on a very different role. As you remember, when we built this building, this particular space has really old school kind of elements of theater, but it also has the most latest technology. So it's really about having students work in that environment. theater and entertainment business as an elected, of course, and of course theater and activism, which is really looking at certain plays and pieces of theater and really looking at really how the messaging that they were looking at as well. And the course that we're putting on the back burner for the year is public speaking. In music, just some really revamping, some realigning. The Introduction to Music Theory is really the course that is replacing Fundamentals of Music. As well, it's just the renaming of the class. It's much more current, and also that fundamentals class really begins the process for that student to be able to hit the AP Music Theory program as well. You'll notice that with the music business program leaving, you noticed in the prior slide that it's really kind of becoming more in a theater department rather than in music as well. So that music business elective will be coming off the books for the fall. TV production, no changes there at this time, that Mr. Pelletier is working for doing some things potentially in the 2024 and 2025 school year. Note the fact that that program went from a really tiny program at the middle school to a much larger, robust program here. So we're still kind of working through building that capacity in this light. In really physical education, no real changes. However, I do put on here that there is a hope of really implementing a grade 9 health program, and it's all pending upon a budget. But it's really looking at really creating health for our 9th graders. Early college programming, everything is there. Our Jim Braga Pathway to Business, Early Childhood, which is in criminal justice, which is through our partnership through early college with Massasoit Community College. And then, of course, all of our school-to-career internships as well. One thing we're really excited by, it's not really in the program of studies per se, but I wanted to share it with you because you may start seeing pieces of this coming out over the spring, that with the collaboration of a team here, especially with Tony Cupie, who runs our innovation lab, that we have been working on creating innovative pathways. We're looking to partner with the state in doing something in manufacturing as well as environmental and life sciences. We're in the grant application process, but I wanted to share it with you because this would be something that would be an unbelievably exciting thing for our school, especially our rising 9th graders, if we're able to access the opportunity for that. But the MyCap planning that you see, that this is something we've already been approved for. We learned just about a week ago that we received the opportunity to engage in MyCap, and we've been doing trainings with this. And what it does is it actually takes college and career readiness skills and embeds it into the curriculum that students are learning. So as they're learning the concept of collaboration and communication, how does that play a role in what they're doing in real world once they leave us as well? So we're still in the training process, but we're pretty excited that we're able to engage. And the MyCap is a huge element of the innovative pathways. So I'm hopefully going to come back to you soon with more on that. In school counseling, really just to close, that we really have done a lot of work over the last year of really looking at really trends and what we're seeing from college acceptances, and really the work of really analyzing how we do what we do. And that starting in the fall, that all of our electives will go to a CP level and not an unleveled level, with the exception of PE. The one class that will remain that will go to a CP is the sports medicine class, just simply because of the nature of that course. And that, starting with the class of 2024, that will be using only a weighted GPA, that for years we had a weighted and an unweighted, and we would always fluctuate between the two. But what we're finding is that the trends at the higher ed level is that they're only really interested in the weighted average. And so what we're beginning the process now is really utilizing that piece as well. So I thought it was important for families to know that. Mm-hmm. So what's next? You're going to notice the fact that there's one thing that I'm sure maybe people at home are asking is, well, what about the new schedule? You shared all things about courses, but what about the schedule? So starting next week is our advisory week, and I'll share with you what we're doing with that. Our school counselors will spend a few days at the Nichols Middle School working with the 8th graders, getting them ready to come up to the high school. And that will be really helping them identify the courses that they're looking for. Scheduling will officially open on next Friday, the 10th, in 2023. And that will be sending out information to families shortly about what that looks like. And that when the portals open, that we're keeping a student-driven schedule. But there's one thing we're adding this year, because the feedback from families as well as from teachers is that we're implementing teacher recommendations this year. So it'll allow for families as they're making decisions for courses to get a little bit of a sense of the voice of the teacher to say, I really think this is the course I would recommend. It doesn't mean the student has to go into that course. It just gives a talking point to a family as they're making those decisions. Program of studies night, so you're going to notice for the families that it's every night next week, Monday through Thursday at 6:30. We decided to do many of the sessions because part of that night is going to be talking a little bit about the new schedule, what it looks like, but also talking about the program of studies. And what we're hoping to do is create two different avenues. So if we have a lot of rising ninth graders families, it's going to be that conversation with them because it's a very different conversation than maybe a senior parent walking in the door wanting to know what a senior year going to look like. And so we'll divide and conquer the groups so we can do much more personalized engagement with those families. And that will be here at the high school. And then scheduling support will be happening all throughout the month of February for grades 9 through 11 as well. And the one thing we're doing is our advisory week. So starting on Monday, we're going to be running an advisory schedule for all 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it will be a 30-minute advisory that will be actually talking about the new schedule. We'll be talking about courses. We're doing live feeds because this building has the live feed from the TV studio. We're doing live shows from the TV studio each and every day, where the English department will get up and talk about what's happening in English and in math and in science and in history. We're doing a student learning profile to help students try to look at really what they're passionate about so that they will help them make selections in their schedule about what they're passionate about and not the sense that they must take this course. So we're hoping this document will be of a help to them and to the families about choosing the courses that they will be choosing. And then ultimately, we are going to be giving them a document where they'll actually use the program of studies to actually do something on paper so they can start looking at the courses that they would like to take. So when the portal opens on Friday the 10th, they'll have some documents in front of them to help them with that process. And so you'll see what our plan is there. And I'm ready to take any questions or comments. And thanks for listening.
Mr. Chair.
Teresa, go ahead.
Thank you. I will have a senior next year, so there's a couple things I saw that I'm excited for him to be able to do, and I like this whole process. The one thing that I noticed that you took out that I'm kind of a little bummed about is the public speaking course, especially given the last few years through the pandemic, and where it's certainly not an easy thing for anyone anyway, but now our children have really suffered in that way. I'd like to maybe hear from you why that was taken out and
Sure.
what the thoughts are going forward as far as
Yeah.
giving kids that opportunity.
Sure. I think there are three reasons. One in particular is the fact that nobody signs up for it. There are very
I had a
few.
feeling, yeah.
And so it ends up being that you have students who are placed in it because it fits their schedule, which then it really doesn't oftentimes yield the experience that you're hoping for. But then two, in all of the cases of anything that was coming out, it was really a sense of really, well, how are we absorbing the skills that are needed? So you're finding it in English, you're finding it in history, you're finding it in theater. So that ability for students to get up and present and to defend is still happening, but we're not doing it in this isolation of that course. The goal is, Teresa, is to be able to see where it goes for the year and then try to run it again, because we were noticing that was a course that the numbers were so tiny. We filled it, but we also knew the fact that the course was not yielding what we were really hoping for it to do.
Yeah, no, that's fair, thank you. I
So-
think it's just important for people to hear it. I certainly wanted
Absolutely.
to hear it as a parent.
Yeah.
And, when you go to college, for those who take that path,
Right.
that's a requirement.
That's
So it's kind of a nice thing to be able to have before you get to college. It was definitely one of the most difficult courses for me going into college, having never had that experience. So I'd like to see kids have it, but I like that you're offering it in other areas, in other content that is necessary for them. So thank you for that explanation.
Other questions? Paul, I have one about seminar and research are coming out of next year's, I get for a period in time. The question I have is around capstone. Seminar was always set up, generally speaking, that a student should take that in freshman, sophomore year,
Right.
and then research junior, senior.
Right.
Is there anybody going to be left behind? For example, a senior who was going to take it this year but is not there.
There isn't. So this was the school year that we were looking to do a revamping and a reviving of the program. And it ended up being that we need to now train somebody new to be able to be that teacher, because the teacher who was trained is no longer with us. And so we decided the fact that we were going to table it, come back around again, because before, when we launched the AP Capstone program, we had an English teacher and a science teacher. And that the goal is to move the entire AP seminar and research program back into English in total. So what we need to do is regroup it, send somebody for training, we hope this summer, to allow that person to be able to start building in some of the skill in grade 9, because that was the whole goal, is you work with your 9th graders to start looking at some of the skills of AP Seminar of Capstone, implementing those in English 1, so that way those students going into grade 10 could go into AP Seminar with some confidence that they know how to do this research, they know how to do these skills, and then it would allow them to go into grade 11 research. So currently, Mr. Young, there's nobody in the building that would be at a miss for those 2 programs going off the books for 1 year.
Yeah, I had a question. Thank you for this. This is probably my favorite time of the year, seeing this, so thank you for all your work. When you said about the teacher recommendations, is that something that's going to be sent home with each child, or is that something like a parent or a child is going to have to seek out from each individual teacher?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Marcy. I'm glad you asked it. It's actually going to be something you'll be able to see right in Aspen.
Okay.
So it is actually a filter that we put in another column really into the view that you will see, that you're going to be able to see exactly what teachers have recommended your son, in your case, for next year. Mm-hmm. And then basically, it doesn't force the schedule to schedule it that way. So you may see the fact that a student's been not recommended for, say, English 2 college prep, but the student really wants to do honors. It doesn't force the student to have to take the CP. It just gives, we've never done it this way, that normally it's been student-driven schedule, which I'm a big believer in, but then the teacher recommendation part was after the fact. Mm-hmm. And now what we thought would be so much more collaborative in approach is to allow the teachers to do it at the beginning, for you as a parent, for the parents and the students to see, based upon what they have seen and what you've done in class, that we really felt that this would be the level that would be great for you, but it still allows for the autonomy of the student and the parent to say, you know what, I think you should really do this level or this course. So it just gives you a little bit of a menu of what was recommended.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? You have a question?
Also on the teacher recommendations, or the teacher piece of it, we're so early on into semester 2, so how does that work with,
Yeah, so that is the one. So this is really our test run year. So next year will be very different, because as you know, we'll have the students all year. So the recommendations will look a little bit different. So for students, we asked all of our teachers that for first semester, that's the ones you certainly can do, because you know. In some cases, the teachers can go back to last year and get a little bit of a feel of, say, for example, you know, they're in English right now. And so being in English right now, that's how do you make a recommendation? They may be able to go back and go look to see. So we know there may be certain holes that you're not going to get, so we know that. And it's really about beginning to rev the engine of really having this be part of our culture.
for next year?
Yep.
Okay, great,
Yep.
thank you.
And we're also doing it with the 8th graders as well, working with Mrs. Latender and the team there. That we're actually having the 8th grade teams do the same protocol, not in Aspen though, it's going to be different. And that way we'll be able to have that information for families as well, to be able to get a sense of really what the 8th grade teachers are thinking would be great for them coming up to the 9th grade.
Since this is kind of the starting year, and, you know, this round of quarter 2 or semester 2 classes is really the only place where they won't have had enough. Is there any room for the teachers kind of being aware of what they've signed up for and saying, you know, maybe they should nudge up to the honors level, or maybe this would be a better class for them?
Yes.
Even once the whole
So it's
crazy
almost like
weeks
you're
of
gonna
registration happen?
Yeah, so you almost have 2 different schools happening at once, because the first semester, you're gonna see that recommendation. But then second semester students, you'll have more what we normally have done, whereas as you start to see the students over the course of the semester, you're building capacity of who they are and what they're able to do. Then oftentimes it begins the conversations of like, you know what, you really need to be in honors, so you really should be thinking about taking AP Lang or AP US History, whatever. And so that begins, that will probably still be the same case during the spring. It will just be more kind of void of what we're doing right now, what we started today with those teacher recommendations.
Great.
So if you don't see one, it's just really probably because they're in the class now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Generally speaking, we make a motion to approve the program of studies. Do I have that motion? Do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion. The only piece I want to point out, which I think is important, is I recognize the program of studies is predicated on the new schedule for next year. But the school committee still has to vote on the new schedule for next year. I just received early this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, a memorandum of understanding from the union about how that would happen. I sent it to our attorney. So hopefully it'll be on next agenda, if not the agenda afterwards. I do have some questions and asked to meet with Paul over it, so I will let everyone know and send that along to people after our attorney has taken a look at it. But I just wanted to add that particular piece.
So we'll be approving based on pending the schedule?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the program of studies is a list of classes.
Sure.
And so how Paul formulates the classes
Yeah.
essentially doesn't matter. It's just the list of classes.
Okay.
It's a separate entity unto itself.
Yep.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Paul, for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, Mr. Brannigan, if you want to hang up there for just a moment longer, the next item highlights 5 new scholarships for 2023 for our graduating class at Middleborough High School. This includes the Connor Donovan Memorial Scholarship, the Bill Lawrence Memorial Scholarship, Muckies presents the John and Edith Sumner Memorial Scholarship, the Donnie Duggan Performing Arts Scholarship, and finally, the Derek Kaplinger Scholarship. So, Mr. Brannigan, if you want to give insight into all of these scholarships, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Lyons. That, I just want to say, I think it's a wonderful thing that we've started to do many years ago of having new scholarships that are being shared with our students to be able to come before school committee, to just be recognized and to be really just a thank you as well. As Mrs. Lyons said, we have 5 new ones that we have at this time. As always, there's some that will come in, but we know that we're starting the scholarship season, and our scholarship night will be held on February 15th, and more information for our senior families will be out on the bulletin next week. But our first one is the Connor Donovan Memorial Scholarship, which really was created by the Connor Donovan Memorial Fund. The goal is to spread awareness and education on the connection between mental health of adolescents and young adults in the current fentanyl epidemic. Apologies. It's a $2,500 scholarship to be awarded to a graduating senior with the intention of pursuing an undergraduate degree in a field that assists with those mental health challenges, psychology, and social work. So really want to thank the Connor Donovan Memorial Scholarship Fund for their ability to work with us. The Bill Lawrence Memorial Scholarship. As you know, Bill Lawrence was a very long-time physical education teacher, celebrated and award-winning baseball coach, and his family has come together to begin a scholarship in his name. The family, on behalf of the family, they're happy to award a $1,000 scholarship in Bill's name to 2 graduating seniors who will attend a 4-year accredited colleges, 2-year accredited college, or an accredited trade program. And selections will be based upon financial need and along with involvement in the community as well. The Muckies presents the John and Edith Sumner Memorial Scholarship. This is one that will be seeking the education for a student going into higher learning. The scholarship will be given as an aid to an incentive to a student who has a financial need or has preserved as a student despite personal and family-related obstacles. So students will apply for that, and we want to thank Muckies and the John and Edith Sumner Memorial Fund for that. And the last 2 is the Danny Duggan Performing Arts Scholarship. These last ones, the last 2 I'm going to share with you, just came in over the last 2 weeks, and I want to thank Mrs. Lyons for allowing these to appear on the agenda this evening. As you know, Mrs. Duggan was the Fine Arts Department Chair and a beloved theater arts teacher here at the high school for 25 years, and she passed away this past October. During her tenure, she had created and really spearheaded the unbelievable growth of the theater program and really a commitment to the performing and fine arts. This scholarship will be available to students who have been accepted to a 4-year school with the goal of majoring in an area of fine arts. Preference will be given to those who plan to pursue theater arts. 3 top finalists will be asked to schedule an interview with the scholarship administrator, and that is where the selection will be made. So just a thank you to the family for bringing that forward. And the last one is the Derek Kaplinger Scholarship. If you knew that Derek was a student here at Middleborough High School who graduated in the class of 2012, he was an unbelievable young man who had a spirit here in this building. He was a student athlete 3 seasons, and that ultimately he passed away in a car accident back in June. The family has created a scholarship in his name, and they will be given to 1 or more students in the graduating class of 2023 who are seeking to continue their education beyond high school. The scholarship will be awarded by the committee when they meet in early May, and it's really based upon really the ideals of Derek's life. So I want to thank the Kaplinger family for bringing that forward as well. Thank you for your consideration.
Sure.
Questions for anybody? Oh, well, the new scholarships are fantastic.
They are.
The community has been exceedingly generous. Can you give us an idea of how much students get in scholarships each year?
Yeah, absolutely. Last year for the class of 2022, and this was void of the alumni scholarships that were there, that we gave out over $300,000 in scholarships to students. So just an unbelievable support of our community.
Thank you. And thank you to people like these who put together these scholarships. And I know if people are interested in donating to particular scholarships, who can they contact, Paul?
They can contact our school counseling office, and either Mrs. Pont or Mr. Goldman can help them be in touch with the foundation or the sponsor or the family.
Thank you. And the same applies for learning how to create a scholarship for a student too, correct?
Yep. So all of these scholarships, for most of them, they worked with us in creating the direction they wanted to go. So those have been some really wonderful meetings with families about really what their vision is for the scholarship, and then our help to them to bring it to life.
And I also know that one of the things that has always been great is on your end, there's sort of an expectation of the kids that the kids who get scholarships really need to reach out and meet with the people who are giving the scholarships.
Right.
And I know people do that in a variety of ways. For example, Oak Point does that differently
Right.
than, say, the Mitchell Club or other local scholarships.
It's great, and we have many of the sponsors that come to the scholarship night every June, and we make sure that those sponsors, those families have an opportunity to meet the recipients as well. So it's a nice night.
With that, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the 5 new scholarships.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Again, Paul, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who put these
Thank you,
together.
everyone.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Great,
Thank
thank you, Mr. Brannigan, and a special thank you to all the donors. Next, I would like to call Ms. Jennifer Healy to the table to provide a special education update for our community.
Committee. I'm here tonight to present to you an update on the Special Education Department. We've been quite busy the past few months, and so I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the work we've been doing, but also some of the areas we're going to be focusing on from here on out. We have lots of other things we'll be focusing on before June. One of the areas that I have really kind of spent some time on was professional development, and back last spring, prior to my appointment as director, this was an area that I really wanted to target. We've had lots of different opportunities for staff, and that's district-wide, special educators, ESPs, so I'm going to share with you just a few of those opportunities so you can get an understanding of what kind of things teachers have been exposed to. The first is the continued work from Dr. Deborah Harris. She was our educational consultant, or is our educational consultant from years past. She is the creator of the RISE program, which I've spoken about before. And through the RISE program, teachers and other staff members learn about inclusive practices, co-teaching models, strategic intervention, and really general disability awareness to help support students within the inclusion classroom. Back in 2018, Kimberly Redlawn, who's one of our special ed coordinators at the elementary, and myself took over this work of Dr. Deborah Harris, and we became district trainers. And so last year, we took a brief hiatus from conducting RISE, and we were able to bring that back this year. With a 4-day training, we were able to train 23 general educators and special educators and have them go through all of the different activities and strategies so that they can start to embed them within their classroom. We got a lot of great feedback from this program, and we're looking forward to bringing on another group of co-teachers next year. Another training that was conducted was for disciplinary procedures for students identified with special education needs. We do this periodically because there are different procedures in place for disciplining students who are identified for special ed. It's important to note that disability does not absolve you from receiving a discipline, but it does trigger a response from our district to make sure we're looking for patterns, understanding how disability might manifest itself in the classroom, in the hallway, in an unstructured setting, and making sure that there is no substantial relationship between the disability and the infraction that we see. And so there are, like I said, procedures in place. One of those procedures is a manifestation determination review, which is a meeting conducted after a student with a disability is suspended for 10 or more days. So this training was given to all building administration just to make sure that we are in compliance with those policies and providing our students the most support we can when we are noticing behavioral patterns. A lot of times when we are doing some of these manifestations, what comes out of that is a need for additional evaluation for a student or more supports embedded or services embedded within the IEP. So that's really the purpose of making sure we implement these. We've had updated safety care training. So safety care is our crisis prevention training program that we utilize. Our behavior team conducts this training periodically throughout the year so that our staff have proper de-escalation strategies and physical restraint strategies that are in alignment with the safety care model. And they are safe and they are effective for our students. So we do that periodically to just make sure all of our members are updated. That's usually on a yearly basis. Another area that was focused on was professional development for ESPs. So this was a group of staff that I felt very strongly about last year. Oftentimes when we're planning professional development, ESPs are able to go to a lot of different trainings, but I always found that it wasn't always geared to exactly the strategies and the supports that they need in order to conduct their work every day. So one of the things I really wanted to focus on was finding meaningful professional development for them. And I think we've achieved that at the beginning of this year, but I think there's also more work to be done, and I'm looking forward to continuing it. I'll go through some of these trainings very briefly. They're up on the screen so you can read them, but I also want to give credit where credit's due, because a lot of these trainings came from our staff members in-house, and to put together a training and then to train people is a lot of work. So there were lots of wonderful volunteers who did this. So we conducted an orientation, myself and my coordinators, at the beginning of the year for all new staff, but also for veteran ESPs, just to make sure we're all on the same page. It was really a nuts and bolts of the job, the roles, the requirements, but also some strategic interventions that can be embedded within the classroom itself. We also had our behavior team run a couple different trainings for ESPs for de-escalation strategies and just overall behavior in the classroom, behavior management. So that was conducted by our district BCBA, Elizabeth Hill, and her team of registered behavior technicians. We had Kate Graham, one of our speech and language pathologists, participate and conduct a training for communication strategies at the high school level for ESPs there. She's also going to be doing some training going forward with the elementary crew as well. Sensory and behavior training for our pre-K staff was conducted by Melissa Deutschman, one of our special ed coordinators at the MEC. And we also had the opportunity to have our K through 5 ESPs participate in reading strategy support with Diane Phillips and Melinda Madigan. And we also had Handwriting Without Tears, which was sort of a group effort through that program. Our occupational therapist, Kate Cooney, and physical therapist, Kelly Mitchell, also conducted some trainings on strategies that can be implemented in the classroom setting for OT and PT. And then, like I said before, safety care for selected staff in particular programs where de-escalation is a little bit more prevalent. Okay, and there's more to come on professional development, and I promise this is the last slide on professional development. We are going to be doing another training through Dr. Harris. She's come up with an additional training that's really targeted for our general ed population, our administrators, and our ESPs, and it focuses more on understanding the disability and how that looks in a classroom and how it is tied to the learning process. And so myself and Kimberly Redlawn will be targeting those 3 particular groups in this training, Understanding Disability Beyond the Label. So that's to come. Our motor group, our occupational therapy, physical therapy, and adapted physical therapy will be preparing for the rest of this year to conduct a job alike. We're hoping to reach out to neighboring districts, to their motor departments, and invite our local occupational therapists, physical therapists, and APEs into our building next year to be able to create an opportunity for those particular disciplines to get together, talk about strategies, and share resources so that we can all benefit from that. So there'll be some preparation for that. We're also sending a group of staff, both general educators and special educators, to some training for targeted reading interventions so that we can strengthen our Tier 2 and Tier 3 models. So Tier 2 being students who are at risk or demonstrating difficulties with reading materials, and then Tier 3, those students identified as having reading disabilities and really requiring that intensive instruction, with hopes to really build and strengthen those skills and also close the gap. We are, like I said before, Ms. Kate Graham will be conducting some more communication training for our ESPs, and our behavior team will continue to do de-escalation strategies across the district. I'm going to touch a little bit on this topic, but I'm going to talk about it in an additional slide. We do have a new IEP format coming from the state, and so there will be training that needs to take place next year for our staff in order to navigate this new format. But I'm also predicting that we'll have some training for our families, our community, and our students, because ultimately an IEP is a student's document, so they'll need to also know how to navigate that new format, which I'll speak to in a few. This year, we are going to be focusing on tiered focus monitoring through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This is their review process to ensure that the district's compliant with both federal and state regulations, making sure that we are doing the things we are supposed to do to support kids every day. This is a 3-year review cycle, but it is broken into 2 groups, and each group looks at different identifiers. So we are labeled as Group A this particular year, which focuses on student identification, IEP development, programming and support services, and equal opportunity. So like I said, we are in Group A. We are in year 1 of Group A, which is a self-assessment, which means that we'll be collecting a lot of different documents, a lot of different data, a lot of different records, and we will be submitting that to the state as our evidence of compliance. Year 2 will be next year, and we'll have some on-site visitors from the Department of Ed here with us, interviewing our staff, our community members, and looking at our files. And then year 3, we are hoping we are just monitoring and ensuring that we remain in compliance. For special education, this means that we'll be collecting data for indicators 11, 12, and 13, which really focus on our early education population and our secondary population. So we have 2 indicators looking at students who are aging in or students ages 3 to 5, and then we also have an indicator looking at students who are 14 and older. We also have a document review portion, which looks at 13 different indicator areas that we need to demonstrate compliance. Basically, we are showing our procedures and how we do things here in Middleborough on all of these different areas, so I summarized those for you already. And then we also have a record review where we will be selecting 15 different student records to show the state, to make sure that our paperwork is in order, to make sure that our procedures are in order as well. There's also a civil rights portion that Kevin Avatabali will be focusing on, and that will include a document review as well with 4 different civil rights indicators below. I wanted to give you a quick update on staffing because at the beginning of the year, we had quite a few positions that we were in need of filling. I'm happy to report that most of those positions have been filled, and we are getting closer and closer to being fully staffed. From a district level, we still have a special education support specialist at the elementary level. That is our special education coaching position, still open. We also have a school psychologist from a district perspective open as well. That posting's still there. Nichols Middle School still has a moderate severe special education teacher posted. However, I do want to indicate that we have been able to cover those services from within, so all student IEPs are being followed and all student services are being covered. And then we also have an ESP at the middle school and ESP at the Mary Kay Good. So if you know of anybody who has those credentials, just send them my way. I'd be happy to meet with them. An opportunity I wanted to just bring up because I'm really looking forward to it is my collaboration that I am anticipating to have next week with the Department of Children and Families, specifically through the Educational Advocate Group at JRI. Earlier this year, I contacted the director over at the Justice Resource Institute for the Educational Advocates because I was finding at team meetings that the conversation with different educational advocates from this particular group was not always productive, and I was looking for a solution where we could work collaboratively to support our students. Oftentimes, things would become contentious, and then it was really challenging to sort of move past those items. So I wanted to see if we could find a way that we were able to meet the needs of the students and kind of all come to agreement. So I was able to contact the director and had a lovely conversation. I felt really positive after that conversation, and shortly thereafter, she reached out to me through email to ask if I wanted to bring my team to Taunton to meet with her group of advocates to talk about this and to come up with some solutions. And so we are meeting next Wednesday in Taunton. We're taking a little field trip, myself and the coordinators, to go do that and discuss opportunities for collaboration, meaningful dialogue, and to see what it is that we can do to best support our students here, both in school and when they're out of school. So I'm looking forward to that. As I mentioned, we do have a new IEP format that is coming. There's an anticipated release of the final draft of this format coming in March of this year. And so districts have been notified that we'll have the opportunity likely to implement either during the 2023-2024 school year or the 24-25 school year. Most schools are going to choose the 24-25 school year, and the reason for it is because you're going to need that full year to conduct trainings for staff in order to make sure this is a smooth process. The new document, while I have not seen the final draft, I have seen versions of the draft, and there are changes. It does look different. So there will be some training involved and some time to familiarize with this new format. And especially focusing on families too. Special education and the documents that come with it are confusing, and they are long, and the vocabulary is somewhat hard to get through. And so I think it's going to take some time, not only for staff, but I really want to focus on families being able to navigate these documents with ease. I think that really is the purpose of why the state wanted to reformat this document, to streamline it, to make it an easier document to navigate. And for our students who turn 14, that document becomes theirs, and they should be able to navigate that and be able to advocate for themselves using that document. So that'll be the focus of next year with our special education staff, is kind of working through this new IEP. Extended school year services. My only update is that we have chosen dates for this program. Our full program will run 6 weeks as it normally does, from July 3rd to August 10th. Our tutoring and itinerant services will be 4 weeks at July 10th to August 3rd. And we are going to be posting soon for our positions to secure our staffing. This is always sometimes a challenge because lots of folks want to go away for vacation, and so we're going to do our very best to start our recruiting now so that we can get teachers and ESPs and related service providers to kind of commit to this program, and then we can do our planning after that. So as I've spoken about before, eligibility for an extended school year program really comes from the IEP team. So if you have questions about that, you would circle those back to your special ed coordinator and your IEP team, and they would be collecting data on a particular student to determine whether or not that student is demonstrating significant regression and needing recruitment of skills. I'm going to do a quick update on each building because there are some wonderful things in the special ed departments of each building happening. At the high school, we are continuing trips to Wellspring Farms. It's a therapeutic farm in Rochester that we have had the privilege of being partnered with for many years now. We are able to partner with them through Tempest Unlimited, through a grant that they are provided. So it's been a wonderful opportunity. Students are able to go. They are able to groom the animals there, sometimes ride the horses. They're able to take nature walks on the property. And sometimes they're even learning how to do a little bit of light farm hand work. Nothing too crazy, but maybe moving a couple bales of hay and feeding the animals. So we're hoping to continue that as long as we can. It's been a really nice opportunity, especially for our substantially separate students. Our Cranberry Cafe continues to do our Friday luncheons for staff. Students plan throughout the week what the menu is going to be. They go to the grocery store, they purchase the items, they plan during the week with their order forms, they collect money, and then on Friday they get to serve in the Cranberry Cafe. I have eaten there myself. It is delicious. So they're continuing all that work, and I know that the staff are appreciative of that. As Mrs. Latender mentioned, the Cape Cod mini grants were awarded to not just Nichols Middle, but there was one at least I know of at the high school. Joshua Dyer, our special education support specialist at both the high school and middle school, was able to apply and secure these grants for our students in both pockets. So this particular grant at the high school level is going to go to different field trips for students who might be exploring alternatives upon graduation. So these are students who might be going to community colleges or to trade schools. So having the opportunity for them to get out and kind of look at those opportunities, look at those different campuses and make determinations about what they'd like to do upon graduating. We're also continuing our unified basketball and unified track teams. Unified Basketball was really successful this year. We were able to fill the stands, and I think that the students are looking forward to another season next year, and Unified Track will be up and running in the springtime. The middle school also is utilizing Wellspring Farms, so I think this is the first year middle school has actually been able to utilize this opportunity. We've done it at the elementary schools in the past, and so scheduling wise it worked better for the middle school, and they have not had the chance to do it. So we were able to send students over to the farm this year. Again, the Cape Cod mini grant, I won't go into it because Mrs. Latender already explained about the Tiger Tea and Coffee Cart, but we're looking forward to having our students be able to do that and gain some skills before they make it to the Cranberry Cafe. Something new and exciting for Nichols Middle School is that we are starting a unified basketball there, which will be great to streamline right up here to the high school. That is happening in March. And Joshua Dyer is also going to be the coach of this team. So his name's come up a couple times. He's a go-getter in the special education department. We've also had some opportunities for reverse inclusion at the Nichols Middle School, so specifically in physical education in our substantially separate classrooms, and there's going to be more opportunities to come. At the HBB and MKG, we've had our students within the therapeutic classroom be able to take some weekly trips to the MyLab at the high school to get them to engage in something a little bit different, and also see some older kids as role models and mentors. We've also kind of done the reverse of that and had our students from our Futures Alternative program come to the elementary school and work in our substantially separate programs to help with some different projects. And again, that really creates a nice partnership for the elementary students, but equally as important for our future students who serve as mentors. We've had peer modeling within the building itself, between our therapeutic classroom and our substantially separate classrooms, students reading to each other, students being able to present projects to each other and assist each other. And we've also implemented a new supplemental reading program and strategy across our substantially separate classrooms. So we're hoping to see some nice gains from that. At the Early Childhood Center, we held a community outreach event on January 13th. That was our last professional development day. And that was for families who have students children rather, ages 3 to 5, who might have concerns developmentally about their child and are not really sure whether or not that child requires some services or something a little bit different. So we are asking that if you are one of those families to contact us. We will be holding an additional event to be scheduled in March, but this is part of our Child Find, where we want to ensure that students who do need services are identified and then provided. Our pre-K staff has collaborated with local preschools and daycares, again, to ensure that our early ed population are being identified if need be for additional supports. So through observations, consultation, and suggestions and resources, we're able to ensure that these students are getting adequate support within the daycares and preschools. And there's also been an increase in our integration for our Kindergarten RISE program. Our RISE program is a substantially separate program. However, we are making great efforts for those students to be able to participate in the school building and community. And they've also been building some really lovely friendships with their other early childhood peers. And my last update for tonight is in regards to our Special Education Parent Advisory Council. For those of you who have not heard of CPAC, this is for families of special education students. If you are somebody who maybe has a child who just qualified for special education, or you have a young child, or even if you have a child who's qualified for a long time but you have questions and you're seeking resources, this is a great group to participate in. There's a lot of different things that they do as far as activities, but then there's a lot of resource that comes out of it, information for parents, kind of all over the map, whether you have a young child or a child who is in the process of aging out. So far this year, we have had different nights where we've talked about basic rights and special education. The kids were able to participate in a craft night. There's been a guest speaker from the Department of Developmental Services come in, and the kids were able to participate in a Drums Alive event. And there's a list right there of some upcoming meetings if you are interested in attending. And that is it for me, but I would welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. I actually have a few.
Sure.
So you mentioned the ESPs within the district, and so of course you have many that fall under special ed, but I'm assuming there are others that fall under just building ESP or whatever. Are those ESPs able to partake in these trainings?
Yes, so sometimes yes and sometimes no. We are able to include the general ed ESPs when they are not spoken for in other kind of areas. So a lot of times if there is some kind of content happening for the building or there is a different training going on that's more pertinent, then of course that they would participate in that. But my hope is that specifically that understanding disability beyond the label training would be for all ESPs. Because again, it's really, whether you are a general education ESP or a special education ESP, you're going to come across students with disability within your classroom.
Yes.
So I think those skills and strategies are important for all. But yes, we would be including them when there isn't
Why not?
another thing that is more pressing.
So that leads me into safety care training.
Yep.
How many staff per building are we training in safety care?
We're usually targeting our substantially separate populations because there is a higher risk for any kind of need for physical restraint or de-escalation strategy. We also look at our therapeutic classrooms, and then we would target different administrators within the building, as well as counselors. So there's usually a pocket of people who are trained that if there were an event, you could call upon. I would say within each building, I don't have an exact number for each building, but like I said, most administrators, counselors, and then programmatic staff, so teachers within the program and ESPs within the program are safety care trained. But they're ongoing, so there are
Right.
lists of people we have. There's only a certain amount of people we can train at any given time because of the parameters that safety care sets. So we do have running lists of people who need that initial training.
So does each building have a crisis team that can be called into place during an event?
Yep, so each building has that list of who's been safety care trained, so that in an event that somebody is requiring that level of intervention, any one of those people could be called. And then there are also members of the DIRT team as well that have had that training.
Okay. And, sorry, bear with me, thank you. You mentioned the IEP format changing.
Yep.
And so my question is, Gen Ed ESPs, are they included in that list of staff that needs to read IEPs and sign off that they've read them? Because they may be in a classroom where, you know, this kiddo is doing really well in many areas, but is on an IEP. And so do they have access to that as well?
Yes, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. Every year, our special educators make sure that anybody on their caseload, they are connecting with the staff that would be overseeing that student, and they're signing off on those IEPs. My goal is to focus on our special education department first, because then we'll be able to filter that out and train our general educators. I think that when you look at, yes, everybody will need to be trained, but the way we're going to train general educators to look at that document might be a little bit different than we would train our special educators, because, you know, special educators are going to be writing that document, fueling that document, where general educators, there are going to be specific areas that are going to be really important that we
Yes.
want them to hone in on. So it may look different, but
Thank
yes.
you. All right, and just one last question, thank you. You mentioned the unified basketball at the middle school, and this might be for Mrs. Latender, it might be for Mr. Dyer, but for the Gen Ed students who might want to get involved, 'cause I know the high school, that's how it works, where they, you know, they're working with these kiddos. What would the process be for them to, for those kids? Do they apply for this, or do they have to write, you know, do something to get involved? Just think it would be kind of, great to know. I mean, I happen to have a middle schooler, so if I wanted her to get involved, how would that process look?
Sure. So we're in the very beginning stages. In fact, we're still waiting on the Special Olympics to get back to us. We have secured the spot, but we're waiting for some of the paperwork to come through. But I would say if there is a student who's interested in participating, I'm going to say contact Mrs. Latender directly, or myself. I'd be happy to field that email or inquiry as well. But I would say the best route is probably Mrs. Latender, and then we can get that student on a list.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Other questions?
Sorry.
No problem. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Healy.
That's my area.
Okay. The next item is actually my report, which is already part of my report, but regarding, expectations of students. And what I wanted to talk to the community about tonight was, I wanted to reference the email that I sent to the community on January 12th and give some additional information and some kind of parameters around why that message was sent and, more importantly, what the response is going to be going forward. When I took this job, the first thing I told this community was that I wanted to be part of forward progress in this district. And what I can tell you is that forward progress is the result of a lot of different components. One of them is the collection of data, which you'll hear me present out on later this year when I present my entry plan of findings. But the other part of this aspect of progress is having difficult conversations and approaching topics that are not always appealing. I love nothing more than to celebrate all of the most amazing components of this community, and I'll never miss the opportunity to do that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't also take my role seriously enough to engage with the community about the things that aren't pleasant. So I met with the principals, all 5 of them, in January when we detected, an uptick, quite honestly, in the use of racial slurs in our community. And what the 5 principals and I talked about was that we were concerned about what students understood, and not just about the acceptability of these terms, but the appropriateness, the context, the timing, the frankly, just education around it. So what we put together was a message to go back to our community, particularly our parents and caregivers, and ask for a conversation. One thing I've learned about the Middleborough community is that our parents are extremely involved in the lives of their children, and they welcome the opportunity to parent them and educate them as equal partners with us. So the real kind of thrust behind that message was just that, was to invite that conversation between parent and child. And the reason we did that is because this issue is much bigger than Middleborough. It's bigger than this town. It's bigger than this state. It's not specific to education. And I'm not so arrogant or bold as to think that I have the answer or the magic bullet, or that my wonderfully talented leadership team has the answer or silver bullet or solution, really, to this scenario. What we saw was an array of student responses to these occurrences, and it was really those responses that prompted me to feel as though it was time to say something. Aside from the students who were the target of these words, which involves just feelings of isolation and disconnectedness to their community, there's a tremendous impact on the learning environment for a child who's been the subject of these words. It also led to, in some cases, verbal altercations or physical altercations, and even vigilantism. And when a student makes a mistake, the last thing a student needs to be made to feel is the subject of all sorts of labeling and creating an environment that's errorless. And I don't think that these topics really can move forward in productive conversation without actually sitting down and talking about it. So this message that I sent out, along with the principal, really clarifies that there's just no place for words of hate in our school community, not in our classrooms, not on our school grounds, not in our hallways, not on our playing fields, not in our theaters. And I wanted to make sure that the community understood from my perspective that we need to move forward as a community with this issue. This doesn't define the Middleborough Public Schools, it doesn't define the community of Middleborough, but to me, it's a call to action. So I come to you tonight to talk about what I'm going to propose we do. The first thing I wanted to talk about was looking at our student handbook language. One of the things that came up in these scenarios was I had the opportunity to take a very close look at how the handbook talks about, situations like this. And I think there's room for improvement. So I'd like to work with the individual buildings with the handbook language to see how we might approach this. If we come up with changes, we'd come to school committee and present those changes for review. As I referenced in this letter, I'm looking for training for faculty and staff and opportunities for learning with students. And when we sat down and said, okay, well, what does that look like? Who does that training? I again was humbled because I don't have that answer alone. And I shouldn't have that answer alone. So what I'd like to propose is to establish a task force. And I want to ask for the help of this community, faculty and staff, parents and caregivers, students, if the students feel as though it would be appropriate for them to join, and community stakeholders. I'd like to assemble this task force to help us determine, okay, what does that training look like? Who's going to do that training? What should the training contain? What shouldn't the training contain? And I'd like the task force to guide us. That way, when we respond, we've done so together and we've talked about it, so that it isn't just something that's forced upon anybody or something that's happening where you don't feel like you've actually had the opportunity to have any input. The last piece, of course, involves students. And I've spoken with Principal Brannigan and Principal Latender about this specifically because I do have a couple of student groups in the district that we've assembled already, and I've talked about it before, and it will not be the last time you hear me talk about it. But the superintendent's roundtable meetings are the perfect place to talk with our students about what they think, about what they see, and about what they might propose. There are a couple of student groups, including the Rise Up group at Middleborough High School, that I'd like to invite a conversation. Purely voluntary, nobody has to come, nobody has to volunteer nobody has to speak. You can come to listen, you can come to contribute, it's up to you. But a situation like this warrants that we listen to the students who are in our hallways every day and living the life of a student. So that really sums up what I feel the response to this should be. At the end of the day, the Middleborough Public Schools is an institution of learning, and I think that's the appropriate role for us, when possible, to teach and reinforce concepts, and above all, create safe spaces for all of our students and learners. So that was really all I wanted to say about that issue. I'd welcome any questions anybody has, and what I'll do is just invite anybody who would like to participate in this task force to please reach out to me. You can do that via email, voicemail, you can call central office and speak with my assistant, Ann Gagnon. You could go through one of the principals. It does, as long as I know you're interested, as we get this group up and running, I would just like to welcome that effort on behalf of families and students.
Questions from the committee? No. Questions?
Hi, I just had a question. I thought that was a great idea. I'm happy to hear that we're going to start with some community involvement and a task force where parents and students and everybody can come together. And I think there's a lot of discrimination that we've seen in the last several years that's really resurfaced and across the country and the state and within the communities. Is this really going to be specific to racial discrimination, or are we looking at all forms of discrimination and how we help our students to come together?
Great question. I don't think it has to be limited to racial discrimination, you know? I mean, in this context, that's what it happens to be, but there are many forms of discrimination, as, you know, you and I have even discussed.
Right.
And I don't think that the appropriate way to approach this conversation is by saying we're only gonna talk about one thing. So, while I'll say, you know, it can be unwieldy if you're handling too many topics at one time, I have full confidence in a task force ability to navigate, you know, not just these conversations, but even sort of their agenda and how they might address that.
Great, that sounds great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I will say, only just because Mrs. Lyons and I spoke about the letter, and so just for full transparency regarding our conversation, I asked you straight out, as a parent, as a community member, and as a member of school committee, what your plan was, because you can send a letter, and the reality is, quite often, you're not reaching who you really want to reach when you just send a letter. So I appreciate that you put some thought into that and what your response was going to be, and that's what I asked was, you know, where are you going to come forward with? So I just wanted to put that out there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Teresa. I welcome not just your anyone's conversation, but I really do think that the way through this is through conversation. And that doesn't mean anybody will always agree. It doesn't mean that people have the same approach. But I do think the best thing that we can do as a community is model appropriate discourse on how to talk to each other. And, you know, Teresa, I give you a lot of credit. And I've always welcomed that conversation, and I have, you know, truly a deep-seated respect for that, because we had, I don't know, maybe a 45-minute conversation. I'm unafraid to have those conversations. And at this point, I'm happy to open that up. I think that that's something this community could benefit from a tremendous amount.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, so with that, I'll turn to the next item, which is facility rental parking lots. And actually, Chairman Young and maybe Ms. Hickey, I'll invite you both to
That's
weigh in
really
on that.
my deal. So just so everyone understands, if you remember, we reestablished facilities rentals because we were not up to date given the high school, the way the new high school came. So we redid all those. A request came in, Sarah and I had a conversation about it. In fact, another request has come in since then about use of the parking lot. The parking lot is not under facility rentals because, well, quite frankly, I don't think any of us ever thought anyone would want to use our parking lot. The way this was originally done was Tourism Committee had asked to use the parking lot for the Herring Festival. I also sit on the Council on Aging. The Tourism Committee had used the Council on Aging facility last year. Part of our problem was people just parked wherever they wanted and did some damage to the Council on Aging. So I was tasked by the Council on Aging to have a conversation with the police chief. And so it just made sense for me to have a conversation about this with the police chief too. So what the chief had recommended that we do is have the people who want to do it hire a detail to make sure the parking lot's managed appropriately. But there is one problem that I currently don't have an answer for and have to check on first, which is the chief is concerned that that weekend is also the weekend of opening day for Little League. And given how many spaces are taken up by Little League, he's concerned about that. So I talked to the chief later today, didn't really have an opportunity to get in touch with Little League. I had a couple of conversations with the president of Little League when they were using this facility for the students that went to Pennsylvania. So I can reach out to him tomorrow. But I just wanted people's thoughts about using the facility as a parking, because if people don't want to do that, that's a separate entity unto itself too. So that's why I open it up for sort of discussion, and I'll ask for a vote at some point, but
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have thoughts. This building and this entire area, it belongs to this community.
Yep.
So personally, I feel as though we should be opening it up to the community. Obviously, we have to make sure we're outlining that in a way that is going to keep that area safe.
And to be honest, it's not just this building. The request was for the elementary complex, just so.
Sure, and again, yeah, so any area that, I mean, it's town property, and
Right.
we all pay those taxes, so it should be available. But can we somehow write something up as far as during that time? And that comes down to maybe future conversations regarding policy. But, a contract, a contract that is signed and that they understand that if damage is incurred, then, we all are clear on who's responsible for that damage. So that's just where I'd want to
Yeah, I mean, that usually happens through the
Right.
office. The problem being that we never thought of including
Sure.
those people, so that's part
So
of
we
it.
would need
So-
to maybe a policy update.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's fine, and
Okay.
if it's okay with the committee, if the committee's fine with people doing it, I would just have a conversation with Sarah, and we would sort of figure out in the meantime. We'd obviously turn it over to policy to change that particular piece, but I just wanted to make sure that was okay, because I'm not gonna give permission or allow anybody to give permission where the school committee hasn't allowed
Yep.
that particular piece.
Yep.
So it seems like it's okay.
Yep.
That's fine. I have no qualms
Okay.
with, like.
So with that, the chair would entertain a motion to allow it and to have the subcommittee work on it at the same time.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Anybody in the audience have any questions? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So Sarah, you and I will work that particular piece out,
Thank you. And that concludes my report for this evening.
even though that wasn't part of it.
Right. It was,
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hold on one second.
MSBA.
I have lost my agenda, so I'm just bringing it back up for myself.
MSBA.
No, I have it right in front of me. Sorry. I just had to click out. So I know we have MSBA, a couple of pieces on the MSBA, so people are aware of. The first is that they're in the process of finishing the punch list. The items that were on the punch list currently are really about pieces that have been delayed due to materials not being able to come in because of problems. But a lot of that will be resolved in February's vacation or in April's vacation. The plan right now is that everything will be done and completed probably by May. The second item that people should know is that the committee last night accepted, we received silver status as a green school. In order to qualify for an additional funding from MSBA, you needed to achieve bronze. We achieved silver, but we missed gold by 2 points.
2 points.
And we tried as we might, but we couldn't get the additional 2 points. It would have cost money. So that's what it essentially.
Money to get money?
Right. And you're not getting as much money as it's costing, so it didn't make sense. But these were items already planned into, there were a wide variety of things that were planned into the building to make sure we achieved bronze status. We had actually tried to go through the points to make gold status, but at some points, things have to be cut
Right.
because it doesn't make sense financially.
Okay.
I did say it would probably end in May. I can't think that I missed.
The next meeting is March 8th.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was, it was a relatively brief meeting.
I know that subcommittee asked for the committee to look at some things.
Yep.
We didn't have the opportunity to look at them
Right.
at this meeting
Talked about
because they
that.
weren't
Well, there's
transferred
even
over,
more.
but thank you for
There's
that.
More to come,
There's
so.
more, yeah, there's more to come.
And we'll take care of that, so that's fine. Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
Nope.
Thank you, everybody. And then, first order of business, Chair will entertain a motion to accept the resignation of Mr. Oakley.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it's unanimous. Just so everyone knows, so I had a conversation with the town, Mr. Oakley, even though Mr. Oakley told us in December that he resigned, you have to submit a piece of paper to the town clerk. The town clerk received that piece of paper January 6th. So January 6th was after our first meeting, January 5th. So she sent it to me. We were going to have a discussion about it on January 18th, but we didn't have a meeting. We do have the opportunity to so first and foremost, because when Mr. Oakley resigned, his position will be up at town election.
Right.
So it is a separate sub-position for his remaining 2 years. We do have an opportunity to fill the position if we want to for the time being. The problem that I see, to be honest with you, is I look through our past, when we've done it in the past, we usually give 2 meetings for people to submit notice. So if you take it that way, that means people have it till March.
Yeah.
We would discuss it with the selectmen at our meeting on the 16th of March, which means that that person wouldn't actually sit on the committee because they couldn't participate in that meeting because they have to be sworn in to the town clerk. And so then the election would occur a few days later. So it just hasn't made sense if
Yep.
that's okay with everybody else.
Yes.
Fine. So with that, I will move on. Chair will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Just so everyone knows, the consent agenda includes fundraisers and meeting minutes and approval warrants. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And then we have one action item left, and that's IT surplus equipment.
Yes. I'm just looking for what we surplused. I'll call Sean Siciliano up to the table.
Sean, could you talk to
To
us
tell
about
us
your
about
wonderful
what's been
surplus of
surplus.
materials?
So we just surplused a bunch of monitors that are old VGA monitors. A lot of them were burnt out anyway. We are planning on destroying 785 hard drives that have been collected throughout the years. Those need to be demolished. They can't be given to anybody due to the data that they have. And that was pretty much it. I think there was some other, I don't have the list in front of me, some other equipment. It all reached end of life or was broken.
Thank you, Sean. Chair will entertain a motion to accept the surplus of equipment.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion, any questions for Sean about his demolition derby? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. The next meeting of the school committee is Wednesday, February 15th. Any questions before I make a motion, take a motion?
Oh.
Adjourn?
I do.
Yes.
Just the donations.
Oh, thank you. Go right ahead. Sorry, I missed that one.
There were 2 donations I just wanted to call the community's attention to. The first is from the Pierce trustees to the School Street School. They've donated $25,000 for stamped asphalt on the driveway. The purpose for that is to actually maintain the historical look of the building, which is a very generous donation. It's not something we would have done absent that money, quite honestly. And then next is a donation from Life Touch to the Memorial Early Childhood Center. By using Life Touch as a provider for school pictures, they take a percentage of what families pay for the photos, and then they donate it back to the system. All of the vendors that we use in our district do this, so as they come in, I'll bring them, just so we can acknowledge that, that kind of nod to give back to the community, which is great.
And Pierce Trustees has given us several donations over the past. The outdoor water system at this building was funded by the Pierce Trustees. And there have been many sort of things we needed to take a look at that the Pierce Trustees have stepped up and done, and so we really appreciate that. With that, Chair will entertain a motion. Oh, you have one.
Yeah,
Mark.
no, sorry, did we skip over policy subcommittee?
Oh, I'm sorry, we did, and that's my fault, but go right ahead, Policy Subcommittee.
Meg? Oh, no, okay, so it's just me. Yeah,
I can help
So
you.
we had one meeting,
We did,
and we have another scheduled towards the end of February, correct?
right.
I know that I'm totally like, I'm in love with reading just everything, so they printed me out Section A of G. I
Right,
think
we
it
have
was up to
several
G.
sections. The policy manual is quite large.
Quite large.
And it is a daunting task to appoint a subcommittee and say, fix all the policies.
Yep.
So one of the first things we did was go through and just try to identify when the policies were most recently updated. And sure enough, there was a very significant update in, I believe, 2018?
Yes.
Or 2019? 2019.
2019.
And many of those policies are in line with MASC's model policies. So what we did was we created a small list of policies we wanted to talk about in the next meeting, and we'll have another update then. But right now, we're just sort of getting everybody on board with reading and seeing if anybody has additional policies they want to bring forward.
Can I ask a question regarding that? The bus came up last time. Was that going to be discussed where you'd be talking about children being allowed to carry
Right.
instruments on the buses? And I believe it's not written into the policy currently,
Yep.
so it would be something that would be.
Yep. I can tell you, we looked at the first chapter, which is like organizationally, that policy falls under students, which is several down. So we will get there, but yes. I'll certainly make a note and make sure the committee addresses it.
Thank you.
If anyone wishes to excite themselves to no end, the policy book is online for everyone to enjoy and spend an entire
Oh, I'm lost in it, I can tell you that for sure.
lifetime. So thank you for that, and I know you guys are working on those things, so we'll get to it, but that's fantastic. Any other questions or comments?
No, that's it.
Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Very second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Good night.